on a Saturday night or Sunday morning, depending on which part of the world you live in. Dana White finally announced the main event for UFC 300. We're going to be seeing Alex Pereira face Jamal Hill for the light heavyweight title. And I don't know about you, but I'm ever so slightly disappointed. So let's talk about it before we do. My name is Rahul J. Chan. This is The Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. If you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. So look, man. If we go back a few months, I heard Dana White say on multiple platforms, on multiple occasions, that UFC 300 is going to be the best card that the UFC have ever put together. He told me it's going to be a badass card, right? He told me it's going to be stacked from top to bottom, bottom to top. It's going to be badass fight after badass fight, right? And from when I heard him talking about it and the experiences that I had around the time of UFC 100 and then around the times of UFC 200, my expectations were set fucking sky high, right? And from when he was saying whatever he said, we've had fight after fight after fight announced, and those expectations that I had that were sky high haven't been met, if I'm honest with you. Like, I was expecting there's something about Mary, and what we're getting is Along Came Polly. Now, Along Came Polly is a perfectly respectable film. It made me laugh, it made me chuckle. There was a scene in it where Ben Stiller's playing basketball and he jumps up and there's a big hairy guy with a fat belly and his face touches the belly and it just slides all the way down, and it made me laugh, right? But Along Came Polly just cannot hold a candle to There's Something About Mary, right? So when I'm expecting There's Something About Mary, it makes it difficult for me to enjoy Along Came Polly for what it is, because it just isn't as good as what I thought it's going to be, right? Now, obviously, the event hasn't even happened yet, and I'm going to stay up for it. I'm going to watch it from start to finish, and I'll tell you what, I'll probably enjoy it. There'll probably be moments where I think to myself, oh, fucking hell, this is something else, this is. And I'll probably go to bed saying to myself, I'm glad I stayed up for that. But when you get these events, seminal moments, there's only ever been two others to this kind of standard that I'm judging this card on, UFC 100 and UFC 200, I was expecting a little bit more. Let me explain further. So look, it starts with how the main event itself has come about and how it got announced, right? We've had all of these rumors about potential options for main events. Leon Edwards against Khamzat, Israel against Drakus, Leon Edwards against Bilal, Leon Edwards against even Islam Makhachev's name, Rakimov. Like, these are all fights that personally, and I can't speak for everyone, I'd have rather had headline the event ahead of Pereira and Hill, right? And as it turns out, this fight itself has only been put together over the last few days. You think to yourself, like, where's the planning? Where's the project management? God damn it! Do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't sit well. And then, like, Dana White, he announces it on his Instagram, a video holding the phone up to his face like this and just shouting at the camera, telling us that, guys, it's done. The main event for UFC 300. Like, put some effort in the announcement as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, during the post-fight press conference for UFC 298, one of the journalists stood up and said, "Are you guys going to put trailers together like you did for UFC 100 and UFC 2? Like, do you remember UFC 200, the trailer they had where everyone, I think it was UFC 200, I might be talking shit, but there was a trailer where everyone's walking. Well, that might have just been it. They had their first New York card where everyone's walking around New York. I don't know, but they put together some really good trailers for big events, right, in the past. And the journalist asked Dana White, "Are you guys going to put together a trailer?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, now that you said it, yeah, we will." And I'm thinking to myself, like, you guys are just putting this card together like you did UFC 298, 97, 99. Like, this should stand out. There should be other kind of trinkets and bells and whistles to UFC 300 because it only comes about every 7 years or something. Like UFC 100 and then UFC 2, like that. Like these Centurion events only come about every 7-8 years, or I'll do the maths later. I've got the cards up for both of 100 and 200 here. I can work it out, right? But what I'm saying is, it's not like it's an annual event. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a big deal to me, to the fans, right? And I was smiling to myself because while I was saying that, because I was looking on Twitter the other day, and someone tweeted out saying, "What have the UFC done for Black History Month?" And then someone quote tweeted it saying, "Dana White said nice things about Leon Edwards," and that proper cracked me up, because Dana White was very, very complimentary of Leon Edwards in that post-fight press conference, saying that he got offered 3 names and he said yes to all 3, no questions asked, blah blah blah. But that's by the by. Anyway, let's get back on track now. Like I said, I'd got UFC 100 and 200, the cards open in front of me, right? And I was looking at the fights, and like, I was a diehard fan back around the time of UFC 100. So it's not like I don't know these fighters on these cards. But looking at the card for UFC 100 and 200, and 200's got a massive asterisk next to it, because Conor McGregor was meant to fight on there, and then he had a fallout with the UFC, so they didn't let him fight on there. And John Jones and Daniel Cormier were going to fight each other, but then John Jones tested positive. And you can't blame the UFC for that, right? Because the intentions were pure, they were right. But looking at the cards for 100 and 200 and comparing them with 300, I can honestly say, like, cumulatively, I think that's the right word, but if you put it all together, 300 is a better card than 100 and 200. But the reason why I feel disappointed, I was thinking about if the card itself is better, why am I feeling disappointed? And it's like what I said earlier, the trinkets, the bells and whistles, the fucking hoopla, the excitement. Like, think about how WWE put so much effort into WrestleMania. It's Mania season. And you know it's something big and different to the rest of the pay-per-views. Like UFC 300, if you didn't know that this is 300, if it could have been any numbered event. Does that make sense? Like, the way that they're rolling out the information, letting us know who's on the card, there's nothing to set it apart from the rest of the cards in for this year. Like, this card's got 2 title fights, right? And the title fights themselves aren't ones that get you excited, right? In comparison to UFC 200 and 100. So UFC 100 was obviously headlined by Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir, and then there was GSP against Alves. It had 2 title fights in 2 very sexy divisions, right? UFC 200 was supposed to obviously have DC against John Jones, and the other title fight was the women's, Amanda Nunes and Miesha Tate. But I think the reason why I'm a little bit disappointed is, if you take into account just the main events for 100 and 200, those were real big, mouth-watering fights. Those were 2 fights that any fan of MMA would get excited about. Like Brock Lesnar and Frank Mir in that era, and then John Jones and DC back when 200 was about. Those were potentially like the biggest fights you could make in the sport, and they were happening in that century event. Like, everything felt big. And UFC 300 has a title fight, or 2 title fights, but the main event, Pereira against Hill, it's just not got that certain je ne sais quoi. Do you know what I mean? And it's because it's been put together so haphazardly and so quickly. And I got to thinking, right, like, these guys they know that UFC 300 is going to be in, I don't even know what date, April, is it? April 2024. Look, they know, right? They planned it out. All right, so UFC 300 is going to fall in April, right? So they would have known this a year ago as they were mapping out the pay-per-view events for the next year, right? And, like, it's just like common sense. They have so much power and control over their roster of fighters. It's just like common sense to think to yourself, wouldn't you just think to yourself, all right, this is the fight we want, and we'll tell the 2 fighters that we want you to fight at UFC 300. So if you're planning on fighting in November, you got to wait a few months, you're fighting in April. If you're planning on fighting in the summer 2024, well, actually get in the fucking gym because you're doing it in April. Do you know what I mean? And I thought to myself, why is it that the UFC seem to work in these like 3-month cycles? It's like a fucking hamster on a spinning wheel. Like they're just always constantly going, and there's no time to think or plan or prepare. And there's a couple of potential reasons that I can think of off the kind of top of my head. Is it just because that they've just dropped the ball? Dana White's busy with Power Slap, and he's leaving Hunter Campbell and all of them guys to run the show, and there's no one there kind of steering the ship to lead the way to say, right guys, we need to map this out. We want this fight on this card in the summer for International Fight Week. We need this fight for April for UFC 300. We need this fight for the Saudi card. We need this fight for November when we go to New York. And then we'll plan the schedule of the fighters that we want on these cards around it. Now, obviously, you can't control injury. You can't control that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, you can do your best. You can make an earnest effort. And they haven't on this occasion, right? So is it because they've just become complacent? Is it just complacency that's done it? Is it because the focus is no longer us, the fans? Like, we seem to be excited about this event because, to me, it's almost like I attach memories to it from 100 and 200, right? So when you know, all right, shit, we're at UFC 291. That means UFC 300 is coming around the corner. It will be next year. I wonder what UFC will do for that. Do you know what I mean? Is it because they don't really care about what the fans want, need, or the experience that we have? It's like they become less reliant on pay-per-view buys since the deal that they've done with ESPN. And it's like a mixture of they don't really care about making it special for the fans and the complacency because they know what their revenues are going to be. It's kind of guaranteed. And they're just thinking to themselves, you know what? These guys are going to buy it regardless because it's 300. So we don't really need to stress or worry so much. Is it because nowadays the UFC have got this new kind of, it might not be new, they've probably been doing it for a while, but every time they go to an arena now, the arena pays them a fee, a site fee. Like just this week, Anaheim Arena, where they were for UFC 298, they were there on the Saturday, and then WWE were there on the Monday, I believe, right? And they were talking about this deal that the TKO group have done with Anaheim to go there 3 times a year for the next 3 years or however long. Like wherever the UFC go now, they get a fee to be there. So now are they kind of trying to serve the venues as well? Like these guys are paying us X amount of millions, and they're not just gonna sit there and take any old card, which is why they're stacking 298, why they stack 299. Like if you just take the fights from 298 and 299, you could have taken like 2 or 3 fights out of 298, 2 or 3 fights out of 299, stuck them in 300, and everyone would have been like, you know what, that's a fucking big boy card, that is. I'm really excited about it. But they had to spread it out, and they kind of had to spread themselves so thin. I don't know, man. I don't know, and maybe it's just feeding into me kind of getting lethargy. I feel lethargic as a fan of the sport because it doesn't excite me the same way it used to. Like, I have little moments, but like back in the day when I was more actively making videos, it's because there was always something happening that was exciting me, making me think, like having an effect on my emotions, and that's just not the case so much anymore. It's just a bus that just keeps going, and it stops, and then people get off and people get on, and there's nothing new. It's just the same pattern that just flows over and over again, and it's a bit kind of disheartening, really. But look, you can never judge a card, you can never judge an event before it's happened, right? But one thing as a fan of the sport that I live for is when Bruce Buffer's announcing 2 fighters in an octagon and they're staring at each other, and you can hear the commentators saying stuff in the background, and the excitement that you have, those kind of, I don't know whether they're butterflies or what, the emotions that you have in your tummy, because you know in about 30 seconds the bell's going to go and these 2 guys are going to fight each other, and it's a fight that you've wanted to see for fucking absolute ages. UFC 300 doesn't have a single one of those for me, unfortunately. It has some really good fights that I can guess will be entertaining, but it doesn't really have any fights with a massive amount of jeopardy where I think to myself, oh man, like tomorrow is Saturday and it's going to be UFC 300 and I cannot wait. Like, it doesn't have any of that. Like, even like, it's even got fighters that I really, really like Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway, and a lot's been said by other people about this fight. It doesn't make any logical sense. Like, why are these two fighting each other for the BMF belt? Like, they're both obviously bad motherfuckers, but like, I don't know, man. I'm just going to stop moaning and I'll shut up because Arsenal are playing tonight against Porto and it's a big game, right? So let's focus on that. Let's stop moaning about UFC 300. But I just felt like I'll just quickly jump on here and share a few thoughts about the card itself and why I think that potentially it hasn't lived up to the expectations that we as fans had prior to the announcement of these fights. Apparently there's one more fight that Dana White's going to announce. So, it's not obviously going to be the main event because we already know Pereira against Hill. And Hill's been, like, he done his Achilles. Like, he's come back apparently quite quick. Like, I saw a picture on Twitter with Hill topless and his belly was bigger than mine. Like, he was I can't say he was more out of shape, but his belly definitely was bigger than mine, right? And I'm thinking to myself, this guy, Jamal Hill, like, Jamal Hill isn't even a mainstay, long-standing champion. Like, he won the belt and then got injured. Like, he's never defended the title. I didn't even realize that he had given up the belt. I thought Pereira was an interim champion, but clearly not. But yeah, man. All right, I've said about 3 times that I'm going to stop moaning, and then I carry on moaning. So I'll definitely stop moaning now. But leave your thoughts below. Let me know what you guys think about the card. Look, it's a banger of a card. Don't get me wrong. But it's just missing that one killer fucking grudge match. A fight between two fighters that we've wanted to see cross paths for ages. That's what it's missing. And that's why I'm personally disappointed. Let me know what you feel. Are you disappointed? Are you excited? Do you think this is the perfect card? Do you have any issues with it? Do you think I'm talking absolute crap? Put your comments below. If you've enjoyed this video, like it, share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll catch you guys next time.